NFL Power Rankings, Week 8. Lions reclaim top spot while Colts vault up to number 2, Chiefs lurking. Published October 21st, 2025 at 11:04 a.m. The NFL.com Power Rankings jinx struck again. 1 week after I elevated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers into the top spot, hesitantly I might add, they let me down by losing at Detroit, and not in the heartbreaking last-second kind of way. Add in some bad injury news, and I'm sinking the Bucs, cruelly and unmercifully. On the slick side, the top spot again belongs to the Lions, and you better believe I double-checked to make sure they are indeed on a bye this week. But even with the humbling loss at Kansas City in Week 6, Detroit has a strong case for number 1. Speaking of the Chiefs, if the playoffs started today, they would not be in them. However, ask yourself this, are they one of the best teams going right now? For me, it's an obvious yes. Seeding, after all, only means so much in mid-October. Right now, New England would be the AFC's number 2 seed with Denver at number 3. As you'll see below, a few teams made jumps, or falls, that might not appear befitting of what simply happened since we last met. Some of this is just cleaning up the roles a bit and taking a wider lens look at certain squads. Or, as I like to call it with my kids, redoing last week's homework. There was a fair amount of that this week. Rank 1-1-5-2 Detroit's undermanned secondary stepped up in a massive way in Monday's statement victory over Tampa Bay. The home team entered the night alarmingly shorthanded in the defensive backfield, and then Rock Ya-Sin had to miss some snaps with cramps. The Lions knew Baker Mayfield would keep coming, but they kept answering the bell. Despite dominating play in the first half, Detroit only led 14-3 at the break, having left a ton of points on the field with 2 turnovers, a turnover on downs and a missed field goal. Jared Goff's pick before halftime helped gift the Buccaneers points, but the Lions' offense responded with a touchdown on its first drive of the third quarter, and the defense played incredibly well all night. Especially considering the circumstances. The Lions might have taken the Chiefs' best punch in Week 6, but they took out their frustrations on a good Bucs team that they might see again in January. Rank 2-6-6-1, I admit, am out of excuses for not putting Indianapolis higher. The loss to the Rams and a close shave against the Cardinals had me slightly pumping the brakes. But there's no doubt the Colts have a top 3 offense right now. It's humming at exceptional levels. 0 turnovers, 0 offensive penalties, and only 3 negative yardage plays at the Chargers. That and another 38 points will do. Thank you very much. Any serious MVP list probably needs Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor on it right now. Taylor was on another heater Sunday and is now up to 10 rushing TDs, reapproaching his 2021 level of dominance these days, while Jones appears in total command. And a hat tip to Indy's defense, which set a first-half tone and made a big stop late after bending a little. The Colts are still for real. Rank 3-6-4-3. If the Chiefs' record were a hair better, I'd have considered them for a top 2 spot after the 31-0 beatdown of the rival Raiders. This was peak Chiefs dominance, and even though the blowout win came over a scuffling Las Vegas squad, that's exactly what you want to see from a team that fielded a lineup of Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Rashee Rice together for the first time. The result was an extremely balanced attack. Even the run game showed some signs of vitality. Defensively, it was a masterpiece. The schedule stiffens considerably. And the big showdown in Buffalo is only a couple Sundays away. But the Chiefs are suddenly peaking, and Patrick Mahomes is again an MVP favorite. Rank 4-1-5-2. The Seahawks gave Seattle something to smile about after the Mariners lost Game 7, but it wasn't as easy as it initially appeared to be. The Hawks were dominant early, but they mishandled the final 2 minutes of the first half, gave up a defensive score in the third quarter on a Sam Darnold strip sack, and turned the ball over 2 more times in the fourth quarter. The defense looked championship quality, but the offense and special teams made too many mistakes for my taste. A dominant win might have compelled me to bump the Seahawks up to number 2, but I wasn't impressed with how they played with a lead. You're not going to win too many more games this season turning the ball over 4 times and committing 12 penalties. Rank 5-4-1-1. The Packers won the fourth quarter at Arizona, and they did it by winning a few key fourth downs. The defense stepped up late with a fourth down stuff of Jacoby Brissett, and Micah Parsons also took over with 2 of his 3 sacks and several key pressures in the final period. On offense, Jordan Love delivered a big fourth down completion to Tucker Kraft after Matt LaFleur originally had sent out the field goal unit. Those were the high notes. But it was another harder-than-expected game against a seemingly lesser opponent. A disappointing trend for a team that gave off real Super Bowl vibes during the first 2 weeks of the season. The Packers are good, but they still must prove to me that they're definitively Tier 1 good. Rank 6, 5-2. This was the kind of offensive game we really hadn't seen from the Eagles this season. Jalen Hurts was dealing against the Vikings, especially with downfield shots and getting the ball to his best playmakers. A.J. Brown had 2 TDs and the dagger catch to end it, while Devonta Smith had more than half the Eagles' net yardage. Things still are churning up front in the ground game behind a remixed offensive line. But when the aerial attack hums like this, the run's not as critical. Defensively, the Eagles had a few slip-ups and didn't defend the perimeter of the field well enough. But they forced 2 INTs of Carson Wentz, including a Jylix Hunt pick-6, and held Minnesota to 1 for 6 in the red zone. Job well done. Rank 7, 5-2. The Rams had several empty drives in London without Puka Nacua, ankle, including 4 3-and-outs and 4 straight punts in the third quarter. But when they moved the ball at all against the Jaguars, they scored. Entering the game, the Rams were just 13 for 26 in the red zone, but they notched touchdowns all 4 times they broke the Jacksonville 20-yard line, plus once just outside of it, on a pretty scoring strike to rookie TE Terrence Ferguson that pretty much knocked the Jags out. Matthew Stafford is dealing now, up to 17 TDs against only 2 picks. Davante Adams played the role of surrogate WR1 in Nakua's absence and scored 3 times. Combine that with a dominant defensive front that harassed Trevor Lawrence most of the game, and you have Sean McVay's biggest blowout in nearly 4 years. Rank 8-7-5-2, you can never count the Buccaneers out of a game, as they've proven. But losing Mike Evans in his return from a hamstring injury was a tough mid-game blow in the loss at Detroit. Baker Mayfield rallied the troops, but 3 turnovers on downs in the fourth quarter did them in. The defense did a lot of good things against the Lions, but Jahmyr Gibbs gutted the unit a few times, and it was too big a hill to climb. Evans is now sidelined for at least a couple months, due to a broken clavicle, while Hassan Reddick, knee ankle, was carted off the field in the fourth quarter on Monday night, giving Tampa Bay big-picture concerns. Furthermore, I can't ignore the fact that this team has been outscored on the season. All of that explains the notable drop here. As I've said all along, these Bucs will be judged by what they do in December and January. I think they'll still be swinging then, but it's getting a little worrisome. Rank 9-5-4-2, this is admittedly an overcorrection after ranking the Bills way too high last week. Yes, folks, I heard you, and I'm not going to blame the bleariness from a Monday doubleheader for not dropping Buffalo further last Tuesday. I had slightly baked in the idea that the Bills would be getting some much-needed defensive reinforcements, and maybe they sniff around for some trade help. But right now, that's all speculative. What we know, Josh Allen isn't playing at an MVP level, and other offensive pieces aren't doing their part either. For all the crying about a need for defensive help, I could make just as good a case Buffalo could use another receiver, right now. The wideouts are neither winning enough one-on-one battles nor making enough game-changing plays. That's a big worry for a team that's trying to fight its way back into first place with a few tough games ahead. Rank 10-1-5-2. I am always a little flummoxed when dealing with teams that do something similar to what Denver did on Sunday. Sleepwalk for 3 quarters, dominate the final 15 minutes, and still almost come up short. But the Broncos didn't, rattling off 33 fourth-quarter points and stunning the Giants. Bo Nix threw for 174 of his 279 yards and ran for 2 scores in the fourth alone. So I can't help but tip my hat at the team's astounding grit. That said, seeing the defense follow up one of the most dominant performances of the 2025 NFL season in London with a mostly poor showing against the Giants in Denver was utterly shocking. Justin Strenad's int saved the Broncos, but much of the afternoon was a massive struggle. Rank 11-5-5-2, Mike Vrabel's return to Nashville was a successful business trip, resulting in a lopsided win. It wasn't easy at first, as yet another young QB diced up the Patriots' secondary in the early going. But New England eventually got to Cam Ward and held him scoreless for the game's final 30-plus minutes. Drake May was matching Ward throw for throw, then blew past the rookie with another sterling performance. The only thing I didn't like was a few of the hits May took. Otherwise, the second-year sensation's precision while throwing and scrambling, as well as a better showing from the ground attack, made it a good game on that side. 4 of the next 6 contests are at home before the Week 14 bye, and the Patriots are looking like a new operation entirely. The endorphins are flowing in New England, ranked 12, 3-5-2. The Niners are 5-2, but with a barely positive point differential, +7, and a slew of injured players, so I don't truly know how they're doing it, other than to say that the coaching has been excellent and the depth options have stepped up tremendously well. The first defensive test after Fred Warner's season-ending injury went swimmingly, with San Francisco holding the Falcons in check nearly all night in an inspired showing. Of course, it wouldn't be a 49ers game unless someone was hit with a malady, in this case, starting CB Renardo Green, who went down with a toe injury, further weakening a group that was already without Upton Stout. And it seems like they might have to go without Brock Purdy again for a tough test at Houston in Week 8. But Christian McCaffrey showed Sunday night that he still can carry a team, so the Niners figure to maintain their competitiveness during this challenging stretch. Rank 13, 3-4-2. It wasn't stunning that the Steelers had some issues with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, 2 of the best receivers in the NFL. That said, the reason they went out and got Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay in the offseason to go along with Joey Porter Jr. was to combat these types of weapons. Failing to do that and allowing a dormant Bengals run game to awaken is just wholly unacceptable. Aaron Rodgers and the offense did some positive things, as you might expect against Cincinnati, but the overall effort wasn't prolific enough. The Steelers are a good team, reflected by their record, and they're in the AFC North driver's seat, but defensive showings and losses like this last one keep me from buying stock wholesale. Rank 14, 4-4-2. That's now 15 takeaways in the past 4 games for the Bears, and, perhaps not coincidentally, 4 straight wins to completely turn the season around. Another pleasant development has been the emergence of the run game. DeAndre Swift kept it rolling against the Saints, and rookie Kyle Monangai had his best effort to date. The next packet of games, at Ravens, at Bengals, versus Giants, looked a bit easier a few weeks ago. But these are still ones you can envision Chicago winning. Caleb Williams didn't have a banner showing Sunday, and the snapping from Drew Dahlman was a problem. But the Bears are playing well enough now to come up a little short in 1 or 2 facets and still win. Rank 15, 2-4-3. Liam Cohen went up against his former master and came up short. Way short. This isn't meant to be a personal shot at Cohen, but his team looked unprepared against Sean McVay's Rams in London, and things just haven't looked right since the dramatic victory over the Chiefs, which suddenly feels like it occurred ages ago. Travis Hunter had his breakout game, which is nice, but Jacksonville seems to have a Brian Thomas Jr. problem. Really, the overall product was replete with self-inflicted errors. Now the Jaguars have the bye to diagnose what has gone wrong and how to fix things ahead of a stretch with 4 of 5 games on the road. There are some winnable ones, but given the way the Jags have looked over the last 2 weeks, nothing's guaranteed. Rank 16, 4-3-4. That's 2 straight losses after the big win in LA, and the Commanders suddenly find themselves in tough shape physically. They were already down their top 3 receivers heading into the loss to Dallas, and Jaden Daniels exited the game early in the 3rd quarter with a hamstring injury. Up next are matchups against the Chiefs, Seahawks, and Lions, followed by a game in Madrid, so it's clear that this is a dangerous time for Washington. The defense hasn't given us any reason to believe it will suddenly start making big plays. When it's not getting sacks, this unit is struggling. The Commanders have forced just 3 turnovers all season and have suffered from major coverage lapses and poor tackling. Rank 17-3, 4-3. Things have gone south since the Bolts' 3-0 start to the season, with injuries playing a big role. but I'd be lying if I told you I expected things to fall apart. The defense has allowed 27 or more points in each of the past 3 games, and Justin Herbert has 6 interceptions in his past 5 games, including 2 on Sunday against Indianapolis. We know now this is a dangerous Colts unit, but the Chargers were humbled in the first half before rallying and making it a closer score. They're struggling to run the ball consistently, and even the pass game has had some major missteps. The schedule might allow for the Chargers to regain their momentum a bit, and their 3-0 mark in the AFC West still holds up well, but it's hard not to be worried about what the product has looked like lately. Rank 18-1-3-3, I'm not going to kill the Falcons for this loss, but it sure was disappointing coming off the high-flying show against the Bills. Apples and kumquats, no doubt, but Michael Penix Jr. got beaten up, and the Falcons couldn't match the 49ers' 4-quarter intensity. Atlanta left too many points on the field with a brutal final 2 minutes of the first half and a turnover on downs in field goal range while down 3 in the fourth quarter. It made me think, are the Falcons good enough to win a road playoff game? I'm still making my mind up about this team, tough defense and all, but if you can keep a lid on Bijan Robinson, you have a darned good chance to beat Atlanta. Rank 19-2-4-3, Bryce Young's high ankle sprain and a close win over the Jets don't have me in the sunniest mood right now, even with Carolina's 3 straight wins pushing the team's record to 4-3. It's likely going to be Andy Dalton against the Bills this Sunday, and that might not be an awful thing if you remember the spark he gave the Panthers in his first start a year ago. They also have a pretty good run game they can lean on, with Chuba Hubbard back in the lineup, although Rico Dowdle has kind of stolen the show and the lead role for now. Defensively, the Panthers had their best effort against the Jets since they shut out the Falcons in Week 3, but Buffalo will present a tougher test. Rank 20-2-3-3-1, Brian Schottenheimer's offense has been rolling lately, and it received a boost with the return of CeeDee Lamb. It might be time to ask whether this unit is good enough to actually drag the Cowboys into the playoffs, with the defense still remaining a question, even after turning in a far better effort in Sunday's beatdown of the Commanders. Dak Prescott is playing lights out, and he has his full complement of weapons at his disposal again. Dallas faces the Eagles, Chiefs, and Lions in weeks 12 to 14. But the boys will have chances to rack up some wins prior to that. Stay with these guys for a bit. It just might pay off. Rank 21-1-2-4, coming out.